I've been feeling a bit of confusion.
Imagine a power source so clean, so limitless, that it could fuel our civilization for millions of years without pollution or greenhouse gases. Sounds like science fiction, right? But this isn't a fantasy.
Nuclear Fusion Explained, a video shared by AstroNexa this week. Harriet, is this another AI slop story? What's going on?
It's kind of related, but not. So this week, the government announced this really big breakthrough for fusion energy research in the UK. So researchers at the UK Atomic Energy Authority managed to stabilize the process of fusion in a spherical fusion device rather than the typical donut-shaped device that most researchers use. And that comes after another really big breakthrough earlier this month in the US, when researchers at MIT managed to use a combination of physics and machine learning to kind of predict how the process would behave inside a fusion reactor. Because you can't really look inside a fusion plant while the fusion reaction is happening, because it's like hotter than the surface of the sun. So it's a big challenge. Two big challenges with fusion is stabilizing the process and predicting how it will go. And scientists have been trying to recreate fusion for decades, but with advances in science and technology, and now all of this money coming from big tech companies hoping to power their AI revolution and power their AI bubble, I thought it was a really good time to talk about how much the fusion race is hotting up.
Okay. I mean, I was nodding along through that. Obviously, I don't understand nuclear fusion at all. Arion, do you have any basic understanding of what the physics is, at least?
Yes. Okay, so mostly when we think of nuclear reactions, we're thinking of fission, and that is the splitting of atoms that's characterized by the famous equation E equals mc squared. But fusion is about combining atoms. So how it works is that you start with a simple gas like hydrogen, and if you make it extraordinarily hot when it's in an electrically charged state, known as plasma, the particles start moving so fast that they hit one another and fuse together. And when the hydrogen atoms fuse, they become helium, and in the process they release a great deal of heat. And this reaction is, as Harriet was saying, what powers the sun, and we speculate could also be used to create masses of clean and abundant energy. So that's kind of the crux of why this is an exciting thing.
That was actually very well done. Okay, so I understand the appeal, Jamie, but how likely is it that the experiments Harriet has been talking about, which make a step forwards in how this technology works, will lead to sustainable energy for all of us? Because that's the prize that will have most people pricking up their ears.
Have you seen that clip of Mel Brooks on The One Show?
Yes.
Where he's just like, I cannot believe that this is a magazine show. I can't believe that you're sitting here going from this one thing to the other thing.
Yes.
And I just really had flashbacks of that with the Pizza Hut Dine and Dash straight into nuclear fusion. It's like, what is this program? What are we doing here? So in terms of implications for our lives, can fusion save the planet? Are these steps forward that important? I guess the hype must be balanced with a bit of realism. No commercial fusion power plant yet exists. We haven't yet delivered fusion energy on the grid in any kind of sustained economic way. So while the promise is massive, the kind of time frame and cost remain uncertain. But saying all that, if fusion does become commercially viable, we are looking at something that could easily reduce dependence on fossil fuels and help mitigate climate change by providing large-scale clean power. It could catalyse economic growth. Obviously, we've talked. One of the reasons, obviously, that the UK government is pushing this forward about wanting to be a leader in all of this is because of the economic upsides. And then, really, it could change energy geopolitics. We were talking just last week on this incredible programme about the geopolitics around energy, and the countries that master fusion will obviously gain a massive strategic advantage.
Yeah, but I suppose the point is, Harriet, whether that really will be us, or whether if there's a huge threat coming for the likes of Aramco, whether Saudi Arabia, for example, puts loads of money into this technology as well. I mean, for the benefit of the planet genuinely, but actually then that economic shift won't happen. People will be buying the parts for these new machines that can do nuclear fusion in the future. from the same countries that currently supply our energy anyway. Like, we'd have to become a superpower in it.
Yeah, so I think the big picture that's really important to get here is that fusion is kind of like the holy grail of physics. Like, there is a reason that scientists and tech companies and governments around the world are betting on this, even though it's very difficult. Like, it's very difficult to recreate the process of fusion that's what powers the sun and the stars on Earth. It's very difficult, it's very expensive, but everyone is betting on it. We're talking about a potentially limitless source of clean energy that doesn't produce carbon and it doesn't produce radioactive waste. So unlike nuclear fission, there's no waste, there's no chance of a nuclear accident like Chernobyl. And just one glass of the fuel could generate enough electricity to power a home for more than 800 years.
Okay, but what about terrorism, though? You've got something that is, as you said, hotter than the sun. Does that seem like a good thing to put in countries all over the world? I mean, if you're a bad actor, you could surely still intervene.
I think that it's more important to think about the fact that every country is seriously trying to do this. So there are at least 53 fusion companies around the world at the moment. And there's 29 in the US, 4 in the UK, there's some in China, the EU. More than 30 countries in the world have got behind this big fusion experiment in France called ITER, which is the International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor. It's a completely international project as between China, the EU, the UK, India, Japan, Russia, even Russia and South Korea. So every country is actually coming together on this. And at the same time, tech companies like Google and OpenAI are putting an unbelievable amount of money in the private sector. Like, this fusion race has been turbocharged by the AI boom because tech companies are needing so much more energy to power the data centers that they're building. So all of these private companies and all of these publicly funded initiatives around the world are all betting on fusion. And in a lot of ways, it's collaborative because people do believe that if we are able to harness fusion, we could save the world, basically.
Yeah, and Silicon Valley loves to do that, Arion.
Yes, that's the thing that they say they love to do, and whether or not that's the outcome remains to be seen. But I think that huge amount of money pouring into the whole business of fusion research is important. The UK government has committed over £2.5 billion over 5 years to fusion energy development. Other countries are stepping up too. Germany, for example, is signing agreements around fusion pilot plants, and the US government has committed approximately $1.48 billion for the fiscal year of last year alone. So, and then simultaneously, as you and Harriet were saying, you've got the commercial fusion sector arriving, and they're raising billions of dollars. Just in the last year alone, $2.6 billion was raised by private companies. And the scale of that investment, makes you think that there must be something close here. This must no longer be a sort of scientific fantasy, but we must be getting close if there's this pile-on of startups.
Or they're chasing, profit from this technology. That's why private companies are interested, because it's a new technology. But Jamie, if we took $10 billion and put it into the existing technology we have for clean energy and carbon capture, then we'd resolve a lot of the issues around climate change without having to develop technology that might not work.
Yes. Well, I was going to ask because I know, Harriet, you've been getting quite excited about this week, is that we've talked about on this show before the kind of over-reliance on kind of future technology to save us from the current climate crisis. And my worry, having read some of this about it, is that is it a distraction? We're talking in big theories here that this could completely revolutionize our lives. But does that mean that by saying fusion will save us, are we then reducing the urgency to take climate action in other areas? We only have to look at the debate over whether or not Keir Starmer would go to COP. He is now going. But to kind of show that this government hasn't, it's done some great green stuff, but it's not done everything you want. And is there a chance that we are slightly putting all our eggs in this, it's okay because in the future this nuclear fusion will happen?
I see what you're saying, and I do think that that is really legitimate. But at the same time, I think a big problem in so much of what we've tried to do to reduce our reliance on carbon and fossil fuels has been short-termism. This has been in the works for decades. You know, there was an enormous breakthrough in 2022, which was the first time in the US that scientists were able to create more energy than the process actually used up. So that was a big kind of tipping point. But this has been in the work for decades, and it takes decades to build devices in which you can stabilize the fusion process, and then it takes decades to build the power plants and to get that energy up on the grid. But at the same time, in order to achieve large-scale change, and we're talking about a global initiative here, that is a long-term investment. You can't always be thinking short-term. And obviously, like, we want to be focused on reliance on clean energy sources, but this is a potentially limitless source. There are limits to how much you can get from solar power, from wind, from all other sources of clean energy. This is potentially limitless. So that's the big difference. I do agree that these tech companies are not pouring billions into fusion because they genuinely care about saving the world, but they absolutely do care about needing the power that it could offer.
There's another AI element to it as well, isn't there? Which is, it's not just about getting the power to generate the data centers. It's that the AI itself, I presume, can help accelerate the maths that's required to make this work.
So the joke, they say that the joke is that nuclear fusion is the technology that's always 30 years away, but that's not actually the case anymore. Ever since that breakthrough in 2022 and the arrival of AI, we could see fusion become a significant portion of, or provide a significant portion of energy to the grid in like as soon as 2050, which if you're talking about a technology that has the potential to A, completely do away with reliance on carbon, and B, also potentially power large-scale carbon capture. So theoretically, you could use this energy to power stuff to get carbon out of the atmosphere. And in theory, the hope is reverse climate change. So yeah, the arrival of AI in both of those ways has completely changed the game.
Okay, so hard to argue with the implications for all of us if you're right. But in terms of why this week, I mean, what's happened this week? Something about donuts and some scientists in Oxford.
Yeah, so the devices that typically researchers use to try and recreate the conditions for fusion, most of them are these devices called tokamaks, which Soviet physicists first built in the 50s. That's a shortened version of a Russian acronym that means toroidal chamber with magnetic coils. So they basically are like tube-like machines that use magnets to spin and heat the gas until it forms plasma, and then contain and trap that plasma so it can fuse and release energy. And researchers are kind of able to stabilize the fusion process in donut-shaped tokamaks. But the big deal in the UK, and the reason why I picked it as my story for the week, is that these UK researchers are using a spherical one. So it's kind of shaped a little bit like a cored apple. And it's more compact, so there's kind of a better return per cubic meter and potentially lower costs. And these are the tokamaks that Britain is betting on for its planned fusion plant.
Okay, I'll listen back later at half speed and see if I understand then.